Hi guys, welcome to part 2 of how to configure and manage network on a Linux server. In this lesson, we will look at what DNS is and the tools that we can use to manage DNS on a Linux system. DNS, domain name system, that's the meaning. According to Amazon's definition, it is a system that translates human readable domain names, for example, Amazon.com, Google.com, to machine readable IP addresses. If you're new to DNS, please check the internet to get an extensive knowledge about what DNS is. And also, if we have completed our DNS course, I will just drop it in the description box below. So you can also check that in case we've completed it, you'll be able to see our extensive lesson about what DNS is. In Linux, some of the tools that we use to manage DNS are the dig tool, the NSLOOKUP tool, and the host tool. So we're going to go to the next section, which is the how to section, and I'll be combining both Red Hat and Ubuntu section together. On Red Hat system, so this is my Red Hat system, these tools are not installed by default, so you will have to install it if it is not installed on your system. But on Ubuntu system, the tools are installed by default. So I'm going to use the Ubuntu system for this demo, and no worries because DNS on both Red Hat and Ubuntu is the same thing. So these tools will do the same thing on both distributions. So this is my Ubuntu system, and we're going to start with the dig tool. So if I want to query, for example, um, google.com, if I want to see the IP that is resolving the google.com, I can just say dig google.com. You can see here that for the answer section, google.com has an A record of this. So this is the IP behind the google.com DNS that we have here. And the machine or the server or the DNS server that is doing this job for me is this. So this is just a local caching DNS server. So if I also want to query for Amazon, I can say dig amazon.com. And for amazon.com, you can see that we have various A records, and then you can see the server that is doing this job, the DNS server that is helping us to query this job. What you can also do is, you can have multiple DNS server or DNS IPs on your system, and if you want to specify a particular DNS server, you can do that with the dig tool. So what you just do is to say dig at, let's specify Google's DNS. Let Google's DNS be our DNS server, for example, and I want to use it to query Amazon.com. And then you can now see that you can see that we have the same A records, and now the server that is doing the query is now this DNS server, which is 8.8.8.8. So that is what you can use the dig tool to do on a Linux system. So now let's make use of the NSLOOKUP utility. So for the NSLOOKUP utility, it's the same thing. Just say NSLOOKUP followed by, let's query google.com. You can see that for google.com, okay, you see the way NSLOOKUP is giving us the information. It's telling us that this is the server that is doing the query, and then for google.com, this is the IP behind google.com. And also, if you want to specify a particular DNS, if you have many DNS on your server, for example, you can also do that with NSLOOKUP. So you can just say NSLOOKUP followed by, let's say, Amazon.com, for example, then followed by the DNS server, which is 8.8.8. For example, you can see that the server that is our DNS server that is doing this job for us is 8.8.8.8, and you can see that these are the different A records that we have for the Amazon.com domain. So this is how you're going to use the NS lookup tool. And you can see that these tools displays the information in different formats. So you can stick with the one you are most comfortable with since they do the same thing. So if you want to use the host utility tool too, you can just say, for example, host google.com, oops, google.com. Okay, so you can see that say google.com as the address. See the way the host utility displayed the address for google.com. It's different from the dig and ns lookup way of displaying it. So if I also say host, let's say amazon.com, you see that amazon.com has different A records, and we can also use the host utility to specify a particular DNS server. And to do that, I can just say host, let's say amazon.com. Let's use the DNS 8.8.8. So you can now see that it's saying that by using this domain server, and then amazon.com has this A records. So this is how you can use the three utilities to display DNS information on a Linux system, and to also manage DNS on a Linux system. So like I've said, these tools will do the same thing, but then you will go with the one you are most comfortable with, especially in terms of display and also management. There are also other important network configuration files you must know in Linux, and they are the etc host and the etc host name file. The etc host file is basically used to map a host name to an IP address, just like your DNS. As a matter of fact, the system looks up the etc host file first for DNS record to resolve before looking up the DNS server. So I'll drop the link to the documentation in the description box below so you can see an example of how the etc host files can be populated. And also here on my radar system here, if I do cat etc host, you can see an example of how I populated the etc host file. This is an IP address for this domain, which is acn.technic.com. So it's a fully qualified domain name, and this is the IP address, and this is the host name. So you can populate your host file this way. And for the Ubuntu system, I don't think I have populated the host file here. So this is also an example of how a host file can be populated. Another thing, another important file, like I mentioned, is the etc hostname file, and this file consists of this file rather consists the hostname, the system's hostname. So if you want to look at the system hostname, if I just use the command hostname, is this is telling us that this system hostname is AMN1, that's Ansible Management 1. And then if I look at this, the hostname for this system, the hostname for this system is lab O 01. Another important thing you should know is that you can decide to change the name of a host name if you want to do that. And on Linux system, so if I want to change the name of the host name, I can do it. I can do it in different ways. But for Red Hat, I can decide to use the hostname CTL command. So if I even do hostname CTL, You can see that this gives us information about the host name. The host name is AMN1. You can see that, in fact, it's giving us different information. It's giving us the virtualization information, that is the hypervisor where this operating system is sitting on. It's giving us the operating system name itself. It's giving us the kernel version, giving us the architecture version, and it's giving us the hardware vendor too as well. So I feel that I don't even need to do cat etc OS release before I can even know the kind of operating system I am using. I've done an interview before where it is a practical interview. I was given a Linux server to configure, and at a point where they asked me a question, the question was, what type of Linux distribution are you working on? And all I did was to just do cat etc OS release, and I was able to see the distribution of the Linux that I was working on. So if I do cat, sorry, I'm digressing a bit. So I just want to show you that if I do cat OS release, you will see that I'm using Red Hat Enterprise Linux version 9, and I can see some other information. But the truth of the matter is, I think I like this, hostnamectl command. So maybe next time, or maybe next time when you go for, or maybe whenever you go for an interview and you ask some questions about the architecture of your system, hostnamectl2 is a very good command. Even on the Ubuntu machine, this is the Ubuntu machine. If I do hostnamectl and I do etc os release, so you can see the different information you will have with these two commands. So sorry, I digressed a bit. I am just, I just wanted to mention that you never can tell, you might be attending your interview soon and they might give you a Linux server to work on like they did to me. So we're talking about the how to change the host name of a system. So this is my Red Hat system. If I want to change the host name, I can just use the command hostname ctl, and I can say set host name, and I can change to the new host name. I can just say AMN. Let's change to AMN2, right? And if I do enter now, if I do host name, you can see that the host name has been changed. And if I do hostname ctl, you can see that the host name has been changed. Even if I reboot the system, the host name is still going to be AMN2. This is persistent across reboot. Another thing I can do if I want to change the host name, so there is a file, like I said, cat etc host name. This file consists of the host name. I can decide to edit this file. I'll just use the VI or the nano utility to edit the file, and then when I'm done editing the file, I can then restart the services called systemctl restart. Name of the service is called systemd dash hostname d. Whenever I restart the service, it is also going to take effect. The same thing is also done on the Ubuntu. So if I want to change the host name for an Ubuntu machine, I can also do the same thing. So I can just say hostname ctl set hostname. I can say let's turn it to lab, set hostname lab o3, and if I do hostname, you can see that the hostname is already last lab o3 rather. And if I do hostname ctl, you see that the hostname is also lab o3. And if I do cat etc hostname now, you can see that it is lab o3. So we're going to change this hostname back to lab o1, and I'm going to use the other method, like I said, that you can edit the etc hostname file. So if I do etc hostname, I'm going to change lab o3 back to lab o1. I'm going to say enter. Then I need to restart the service systemctl restart hostname d systemd dash hostname this service. So now if I do hostname, you can see that the hostname is back to lab O one. Of course, if I do hostname ctl, it's back to lab O one. So I'm just going to use the same method here. So let me just copy this. I'm going to say vi etc hostname. So I'm back to my Red Hat system, and I'm going to change AMN2 to AMN1 so I can save this file, and I can then restart this service. And now if I do hostname, you can now see that I have AMN1 as my hostname. So this is how you're going to set your hostname on a Linux machine for both Red Hat and Ubuntu. So I want to say thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment. Whenever you do this, you will encourage us to do more of these videos. And also, you can check the description box below for some exam practice questions if you're going to be writing the exam. Thank you once more, and bye for now.